Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Quality, the podcast. My name is Hamish Alangaratne, and since 2023, I've been interviewing some of the most talented and well-respected quality leaders in the pharma and biotech industry to learn how they got to where they are now. This season is all about our guests and their journeys. Why they got into science, how they got into quality, their biggest challenges and greatest learns, and the highs and lows along the way. Every week, I'll be bringing you a new guest with the purpose of inspiring the next generation of quality leaders. Welcome to Season 2. I hope you enjoy the show.
Hi all, welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Quality, the podcast. Today I'm joined by Shane Ernst. Shane is the current VP of Quality at Empower Pharmacy. Shane was, in his words, a scared analytical research chemist when he started his career in pharma and biotech. He would describe himself as an introvert. He's now VP of Quality, having led teams in global organizations. Building confidence in your leadership capabilities as an introvert is something that many of the quality leaders that I speak with, I'm sure, can relate to. Shane gives a really honest and open account on how he overcame these challenges in his early career and what advice he'd give to people that might feel they're not cut out for leadership roles. So let's get into it. Shane, good morning. How you doing? Welcome to Let's Talk Quality.
I'm doing just fine. How are you, Hamish?
Yeah, I'm doing well. So we were just talking off air. So you're tuning in from Houston, Texas.
I'm tuning in from Houston, Texas.
But you're from North Carolina originally.
I am. I live in North Carolina. I've lived in North Carolina for the last 22 years. So okay. Oceans on one side, mountains on the other.
Brilliant. Very nice. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. I've given you a bit of an introduction, but if you could give the listeners and viewers a quick overview of who you are, that'd be great.
Yeah, my name is Shane Ernst. I'm currently the Vice President of Quality for Empower Pharmacy. I've been in the pharmaceutical industry for around 28 years now, in quality 26 of those years. So, rose up the chain, started as an analytical research chemist, and here I am now. So it's been quite a ride.
Awesome. So how did you get into that? Because your first role was an analytical chemist role, is that right? And then
yes,
transferred into validation type positions?
Exactly. So when I was in high school, I was good in math, good in chemistry. So, if you're good in math and chemistry, guidance counselor takes you and said, "Oh, you're going to be an engineer." Didn't know what an engineer was, but then they showed me what an engineer made per year. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be an engineer. And so I ended up going to Purdue, going into engineering. I knew that I wanted to go into healthcare because of my father died when I was in high school of brain cancer. And my mom left her job as a furniture inspector and actually took care of him. But after he passed away, she took what she learned and became a nursing assistant and a phlebotomist. And so I was really inspired by that and knew that I wanted to be in healthcare. And so when I graduated, it was a tough time in the job market and the engineering jobs, weren't there. And so the first job was analytical research chemist for this small little mom and pop cough and cold pharmaceutical company in Seymour, Indiana. And I started there. They started me on this training assignment. They said, cleaning validation. They said, we don't know much about this. It's what we do to train folks. We won't leave you on it for too long. But for me, it was my first scientific assignment. I loved it. I learned all I could about it. I learned very quickly that if FDA came in, we're in trouble. And so FDA did. We were. In the meantime, we had been bought by a German company that did heart medications that wanted to do those alongside cough and cold. Cleaning validation became really important. And so suddenly I'm in a conference room with these German VPs asking who here knows anything about cleaning validation. And my boss at the time pointed to me. And from there, I did the cleaning validation program, and that got me into quality, and that started my career.
Wow. Okay. So when was your first quality role?
My first quality role was when I joined Perrigo in 1998. I had left. I had been at Schwartz Pharma, and I got a call from a recruiter saying, "Hey, we heard you did a really good job on cleaning validation at Schwartz Pharma. we've got a validation program up here at Perigo with a laboratory. It'd be a supervisory role. Would you be interested? And so I moved up to Perigo and started out as a validation supervisor, and that was under the quality division.
Okay. And what was it that you liked about quality in the early days? What attracted you and what kept you in the industry?
Because it touched everything. Quality touches finance, it touches R&D, it touches operations. So for me, I found that quality was that launching board to learn about how everything works, because in quality you get to see everything. So the more, and I just thought that, okay, well, this is a great place to be. I like, I started to understand what the rules and regulations were, and how things are governed in the pharmaceutical industry. And to me, I just got to learn how the pharmaceutical industry started working. And so it was an exciting place to be. And it's sort of, you get a momentum. Once you get caught up in doing one turnaround or one fix, then someone puts you in another one, and before you know it, 10 or 15 years have gone by.
Yeah. And then did you always have a feel for the way that you wanted your career to go? Did you always want to go into leadership positions, or did that just
I
naturally
didn't.
evolve?
In fact, I surprised myself that I ended up in leadership, because I started out wanting to be an engineer, and I'm an introvert naturally. So I was expecting, to be sitting in an office, sort of designing pipes and designing, pharmaceutical. But when I got to know people and when I started out as a supervisor, I realized, okay, I really enjoy taking a team of people and a mission, and helping them both individually and as a group achieve things. And I would say by the time I hit a couple of years at Perigo and had been a supervisor a couple of years, I had offers to be an individual contributor for folks like Lilly or others. And I said, no, I can't go back.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you have to have that innate want to help people when it comes to leadership. But did you? What was it about the helping people and seeing people develop that you enjoyed?
I think when you see a person that doesn't think on your team that it hasn't that doesn't think they can reach whatever the individual or team goal is, and you can help give them that confidence, and you can help them develop those skills, and you see them reach that pinnacle. And it had been done for me. I mean, when Mary, my boss at Schwartz Pharma, she didn't have to point to me when they were asking about who here knows anything about cleaning validation. I was this scared little analytical research chemist that was shaking in my shoes, but she gave me that visibility and chance. And so when I became a supervisor, I saw where I could give those opportunities to, and I saw people start to grow. And that's just the best feeling in the world.
Mm. Would you say you mentioned there you're an introvert? Would you say a lot of quality professionals are introverts by nature, and or maybe even broadly speaking, pharma and biotech?
I think, I would say yes for quality, because a lot of times, when you start out, you're looking at data, or you're in a laboratory. But I certainly know extroverts. I think over the
Yeah.
years, for me, I've had to learn how to be that extroverted personality when I'm at work, especially, now that I'm a vice president and my day is constantly interacting with people.
But do you think you need to be an extrovert as a leader? Because, like you
I
said, there
don't
are there are
know.
lots of I know lots of quality leaders who are huge personalities and big extroverts, but
I don't think you need to. I think
yeah,
that if you're an intro, because my wife is as far on the extrovert scale as I am on the introvert scale.
right, okay,
And so I think that if you're an introvert, you do though need to learn those skills and tips that you need to maintain your energy. Because
mm,
being an introvert is not about whether you like people or enjoy being around people. It's all
yeah,
about where you get your energy. So I think
yeah.
you have to spend some time to really focus on that. And there were times in my career where I got feedback, okay, you need to work on that aspect of your leadership if you want to continue to grow.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, it would be good to just delve into this because I think a lot of people will be going through maybe a similar challenge where they might not have or they might feel they don't have the confidence or the personality to take on bigger leadership positions. What challenges, I guess, did you face in
Well, I
your mind when
remember
you were as an introvert going into leadership positions? Like, how did you what were the challenges and how did you overcome them?
I remember when I got my first vice president assignment when I worked at DSM, and I had a 360 done,
Mm,
a rather broad one done above me, below peer level.
mm,
And one of the comments that I got was, he seems like a nice person. I just wish, he would talk to us more. We knew more about him, and I think they looked at me as whether I was stuck up or whether I was just not interested in them. And it was something as simple as we had a campus at the time, and a lot of times you'd have meetings on one side of the campus, and
yeah.
then you'd be followed by meetings on the other side. And so you'd be racing through halls. And I had my head down, sort of thinking about the next meeting, where if someone said hi to me, I would say hi, but I wasn't engaging them as people. So they were looking at me as, well, okay, he gave me a half high. He's not interested. And I didn't even, until I got that feedback, I hadn't even thought of that in the world because I was in my own little world between meetings trying to sort of recover from one and think about what I was going to do in the next. So
Yeah.
I do think you have to pay attention to, you do have to put yourself in and figure out how you can manage your energy so that when you're at work, you give that energy and you
Mm,
realize that you have to I think you just have to pay more attention to your interactions with others, especially social.
mm,
Introverts are great if I'm giving a speech to a room in a town hall. I mean, I've been called the Baptist preacher before, and I can have that energy. But it's different if I'm to go outside these doors right now and just stop and ask everyone how their day is going.
yeah.
That's not an innate skill for me. So that's something that I had to work and grow about. I had to make myself do walkabouts where
Yeah.
I didn't have any specific mission. I was just going to visit my team and saying, "Hey, how's it going?"
Yeah, yeah. Just spending time on the floor and getting to know people and
Exactly.
turning up with a smile. It's difficult because you can't turn up as a 10 out of 10 every day. You have to, but you also can't be at the other end. So it's finding that happy medium which you're comfortable with, but you also you need to come across as authentic and not as though
Exactly.
one day you're this quiet leader who doesn't really say anything to anyone. The next day
And
you're coming
and
in
the
high
good
fiving and
news
people.
And I think the good news is as an introvert, once you develop that relationship with someone, it's actually a strength for an introvert
Yeah.
because an introvert naturally likes that one-on-one communication. It's just getting past that initial that you have to help yourself to think of these things because
Mm,
otherwise you'll spend your time in your office and as a leader, you lead people,
mm,
not a desk.
mm. Agreed. Yeah. And how did that all come to light? Was it something that did you have a moment where you mentioned there that you did a feedback review and you
I
got
mean,
some
I
feedback?
think
Like,
it was
was it something you worked on over time, and how did you go about it?
I think it evolved over time. When you're a supervisor, I had a crash course in it when I
Mm,
first became a supervisor because I had a laboratory with 10 to 12 people, a
yeah.
lot of which were a lot older than me
Mm,
and had a lot more experience than, this kid
mm,
that was 3 years out of college.
yeah.
So, when I first started, fortunately, I had a supervisor mentor that, took me aside and said, "Hey, it's not just spreadsheets and this tactical communication with
Yeah.
your people to say, I need this, where is this?
Yeah.
It's more about getting to know them and seeing them as a team." So, fortunately, she helped me there. I think that, but at each stage, when you grow, when you go from supervisor to manager and director, and then ultimately vice president, your number of people grows and the layers grow, and how you interact with folks and what you have to pay attention to and what you have to do changes.
Mm,
Because it's not only like when I'm here in Houston this week, I've got meetings, of course, with my peers, but I also need to make sure that I'm seen by both of the sites that see me, even several rows down the organization. So they,
mm.
"Hey, Kira, how you doing?" Or, "Hey, X, how you doing?"
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Do you think there's generally speaking across the quality industry, do you think there is a gap in terms of those softer leadership traits when it comes to developing people? Because I think technical skills is a, broadly speaking, a given. People progress, and hopefully they've got the ability and the technical expertise to progress. But maybe what prevents a lot of people that are aspiring to go into leadership positions is that actual ability to people manage and take people on a journey and
I,
communicate well.
I think it's huge. I think communication is absolutely important. And I will say that I think post COVID, the world, it's gotten more challenging for
Mm.
people coming into the industry because you have remote workforce, you have hybrid workforce, you a lot of times communicate with teams and texts and et cetera. So I think you have to make a greater effort
Yeah.
because you're not always in an office where you have those hallway conversations or what I call the drive-bys. Um, you have to turn that drive-by into a, I'm just gonna, I see you're green, I'm gonna hit Teams and see how you're doing.
Yeah.
You have to think about those things because I think the way in which the industry has changed post COVID, I think has made it a little more difficult, and so you have to make different efforts. I
Mm.
had to learn to be a different type of supervisor during COVID because I had to figure out how each person was comfortable
Mm.
communicating during that because we weren't in the same place. It
Yeah.
was all over a computer, just like this.
Yeah, yeah, and overnight, the way that you interact with people is just changes
Exactly.
drastically, and you've got to adapt to that. Did you find that adaptation of going from on site to completely virtual a challenge?
At first, just because it turned off like a switch.
Hmm.
At one point, I'm in a car driving from the Western North Carolina site back home, expecting to go somewhere, expecting to go to New Jersey, I think, the next week. And then, for the next, I don't know, year almost, I didn't, leave the house.
Yeah.
And so suddenly you had to figure out, along with everyone else, okay, we've got our standard meetings, but how are we going to do this? How are we going to have those drive-bys?
Hmm.
And I'm big on, if I'm around in an office environment, I like to just stop by and
Hmm.
say, how you doing without an agenda.
Yeah.
And that gives them the opportunity to say, hey, I'm glad you're here. I've got this going on. Or, hey, is it okay if I, do X on Friday?
Hmm.
And you couldn't do that anymore. You had to figure out how to do that in a virtual environment.
Hmm. Yeah.
And everyone was figuring out at the same time. So we all sort of had to, I think, across really multiple industries,
Yeah.
figure out how to do this.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's funny thinking back to that time now, 5 years ago.
Yes.
How how short it just seems, and how quickly the last 5 years have gone. But I was saying to someone earlier, I spent 10 years of my prior to that commuting in 5 days a week to an office, and then all of a sudden you're thrust into a remote virtual land, and yeah, you do have to adapt. Um, so let's talk about then your journey into quality leadership roles, Shane. So when was your first director level role, and who
My
with?
first director level role was when I was at DSM.
Yeah.
And it was a contract manufacturing organization that I had joined, and I had joined it as a, I think, senior group leader.
Mhm.
And I had sort of made my way, from senior group leader to manager, manager to director. And the first time it was interesting, I was the manager at the time of the orals and topicals, like solid dose, tablets, capsules, liquid side. And I had a counterpart that was the manager on of the sterile side. And we both, our boss called us in at one point and said, okay, I'm promoting you both to director because you've both done an extraordinary job. And we're like, all right, yay, great. And then he said the second part, I'm switching you. Shane, you're going to go run steriles, which I knew little to nothing about. And Rob, you're going to go run, the solid side of things. And it was just an amazing adventure because not only was I promoted to a director level role, but I was promoted into a side of the business that I didn't know an incredible amount. And it was a close knit community. So they knew, okay, Shane's going to be the director. He's a tablet guy. What does he know about injectables? So it was an interesting role of trying to one, learn the business, but two, be able to lead at the same time I'm learning.
Yeah. Why do you think he did that?
I think just because, one, for the business, it's always good to shuffle things around, and give a different perspective for that business of what a new leader with a different style, different way of looking things can bring to it. I think second, from a development standpoint, he wanted to get us out of our comfort zone, because we had both gotten comfortable. We were both well known in our field. Everyone,
Yeah.
that goes to Shane, that goes to Rob. So I think he did us a tremendous favor.
Yes.
I think his peers probably at the time thought he had lost his mind.
Yeah.
But I think he did us a tremendous developmental favor, that because to
Yeah.
me, that put us in an uncomfortable position. Every time you put someone in an uncomfortable position, it forces them to learn and adapt and grow.
Yeah.
And you get something out of that. And I'm a
Yeah.
big believer in it.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. I mean, it's a brave move on his side, but it's also, he clearly had faith and confidence in both of your abilities to do that.
And he also taught us that tool. So I've then I've done that since. So
Yeah.
I've tried to pay attention to the leaders that I've had, and I have this exercise that I do probably once a week and say, what behaviors did I see that I want to emulate, and what behaviors that did I see that I don't? What have I done that I'm proud of,
Mm.
and what have I done that I'm probably not so proud of?
Mm.
So I can sort of keep that Rolodex in my mind.
Mm. So you were a director at DSM. How long were you a director for before then going into a VP role?
I was probably a director for 2 or 3 years, I think. At a certain point, we were both directors, and then our VP left, and Rob and I were both being considered for the same role. He ended up getting the VP role, and they ended up promoting me to senior director. And that was a difficult time because obviously I wanted the role, and it was very public. They knew that there were only two possibilities, and it was a long drawn out thing, and I had to decide, do I stay? Do I leave now? But I ultimately decided, you know what? This is a learning opportunity as well. I stayed, and then he left probably about a year into the role, and they promoted me to VP.
Mm.
And so that was my opportunity.
Why
So
did you stay?
I I I I,
Because a
I
lot of people
felt,
would say, that, I've not been given that opportunity. I'm going to actively look and pursue another role.
but I had been through that before. When I was back at Perigo, there was a time before I ended up leaving Perigo that a validation manager position opened, and I was positive that I was naive and positive that they were just going to hand it to me. That
Mm.
basically I didn't even need to apply. Of course, it was going to be me. They ended up choosing someone from the outside. And I went into my boss's office and I said, what more could I have done? I've got exceptional reviews. You didn't show that you were interested in it. We didn't even know what your interests were. You got to ask for what you want. You've got to, and then when I saw the person that they hired do the job, I recognized that there were things that I weren't ready for, that I didn't realize. And I started to realize then, well, maybe there's a reason why people are above you on the chain, that
Yeah.
they may have a better insight into what you're ready for and where you're developed. And
Mm.
so after some pain and thought, when I skipping ahead to DSM, I said, well, maybe there's something that I need to work on and develop,
Mm.
to get me ready for this role. And so, and part of it was personal too. I mean,
Yeah.
I was 10 minutes from home. I'd met my wife in
Yeah.
Greenville, North Carolina. And so there were personal reasons. I was well known to the site. And so I just decided, you know what? I'm not going to leave right now. I
Mm.
may be open to other opportunities if they come up, but I'm going to see where this goes.
Yeah. You had the self-awareness to realize that this could be a learning opportunity for you,
Yeah.
based on previous experience. And so, as you then eventually progressed into a vice president role, and you mentioned there were certain gaps where you thought, I need to develop in these areas. What are those areas that you really needed to develop in from going from a director or senior director into a vice president level role?
I think it was more, there's always the part when you're looking at that next job, your boss's job above you. There's the part that you see,
Mm.
that you think, okay, I know what my boss does. They do X, Y, and Z. And then there's that other part that you don't see, that you don't realize. And I think it was that don't see portion. The political side where, we were a contract manufacturer. So how much of the day is spent sort of hand holding the customers and making sure that they're comfortable with what's happening, building those relationships so that you can have those calls, and realizing that, again, it's not a tactical thing. There's that strategic part when you cross over. A lot of times from director to VP, you go from maybe 50% tactical, 50% strategic to 75% strategic or 80%,
Mm.
and realizing what that shift meant in terms of your day to day.
Mm.
And I think once I got into the role, I think I was ready for that as the senior director because, Rob, I was his right hand. So he would give me a lot of that. And I got an
Yeah.
insight into that. And, I, I think looking back, I think it was probably good that I didn't get it up front because I think I was able to do a better job and ultimately prepare myself for the
Mm.
big journey at Hospira that I was going to
Yeah.
take.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about that then. The big journey at Hospira, Rocky Mountains,
Oh,
Pfizer. It was big turnaround project.
oh wow.
What did it look like? Paint us a picture.
I got called by a recruiter, um, after I had been VP in like fall of the year, summer and fall, and this recruiter said, "Hey, I can't tell you the name of the company, but there's this big site, fairly near to you. They've gotten huge trouble with the FDA, and they're making a list of who they want to run quality, and you're on the short list, and they'd
And which
really
year
love
was
to."
this, Shane?
This would have been 2011 because
Okay.
I joined Hospira in 2012.
Okay. Yeah.
I believe if I have that right on my career.
Yeah.
So the recruiter, and I told the recruiter, I said, I know what company it is. I've read the 483, and I know the inspector personally that did it. I don't want any part of that. And they called me back a couple of times. He called me back around Christmas time, and he said, "Look, I know you're not interested, but just come see the site for half a day, meet some people. It's no pressure." And so I left Christmas parties and celebrations, and I drove an hour away to Rocky Mount, North Carolina, this huge campus
Mm.
where there were no Christmas parties, but people were working so hard. You walked into that site, and people were just giving everything they had, and you could feel it. And this was like late December,
Mm.
for the Christmas holidays. And I ended up actually interviewing with who would become my boss, Janet Stevens. And she started the interview and she was asking me these questions. She said, "I'm just surprised that you seem much more experienced. Why are you interested in a manager job?" And I'm like, I thought I was here interviewing for the VP. And she got this wide look on her face. And then she cleared the desk and she said, "All right, here's the org chart." And we just sort of went to work in the interview.
Yeah.
And when I left that day, I went home that night and talked to my wife. And she said, "You're going to totally take this job."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, I haven't decided yet, but I had already started talking about, well, we could do this, we could do
Yeah.
that, we could do the other." But yeah, they were in a lot of trouble.
And what was Janet's position at the time when she interviewed you?
Janet's position was the vice president of quality for the Americas. So she
Yeah.
was over all the sites in the US, but she was specifically really focused on Rocky at the time, and they were looking for that person to come in. But they had something on the order of 1,300 past due complaints,
Mm.
800 past due investigations.
Mm.
They had like 200 consultants on site. You were having people pour in. You had gotten a couple of warning letters at that point, border of consent decree. So you had to build a structure. You had to triage things. I had to build a department that did nothing but file field alerts. It was crazy, but we started at the basics. We went to the agency and said, "Look, we're going to look at every single quality system, not just what you put in the 43. We're going to look at every single one. This is going to take 2 to 3 years. Here's what we're going to do in year one. Here's what we're going to focus on in year two. And here's what we're going to focus on in year three." But this wasn't just remediation, because this was a site that was responsible for 1 out of every 4 sterile injectables given in the United States.
Mm.
So if this site shuts down, surgeries stop.
Yeah.
And so you had to constantly balance supply and remediation, and you had to make sure the FDA was always good with that balance. So it was an amazing. It was a difficult years, but the payoff, when I think it was 2014 when we got an inspection and we had 043, and we were able to back that up with another one, and so we had followed it through, and I had been able to build a team and see that team then
Mm.
get
Yeah.
promoted to other teams. So it was an amazing experience.
Yeah. Wow. Did you go into that role with a kind of a blueprint of this is how we need to turn this around? Is that
I
something that you had in
I
your
I,
knowledge bank?
I went in there with a framework because I had done turnarounds before, but I quickly found out that what I thought was the reality was like multiplied by 100.
Yeah.
So I had to change the framework a little bit, because at first, you always think in terms of remediation, but then
Mm.
all of this product was shipping out every single day. So the first thing you need to do is make sure, okay, what is my comfort level with that? What are all these 200 consultants doing? And, how do I make that being a driving force? So I think my plan had to be adjusted a little bit. The framework stayed the same. You have to get the right people in.
Yeah.
You had to make sure that every consultant was trying to get you back on your feet again.
Mm.
And you had to make sure that you balance that remediation supply, and we had to rebuild the trust with the agency. And
Mm.
fortunately, I had known the Atlanta district and had been working with them at DSM now for 10 years, so they knew me.
Yeah.
So I was at least able to talk to them and say, okay, here's the situation, here's what we're doing. We're going to
Mm.
talk. I'm going to update you every month on where we
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. Yeah. So you had that constant dialogue and relationship
Exactly.
with the
We had the
individuals.
transparency, and I think over time that built not only at the center level, at the district level, but also at the center level where there
Mm.
was a lot less trust.
Yeah. Is that important? How important is that in terms of building a relationship with the
Absolutely critical,
agency? Yeah. And how do you go
because
about it?
the first time that you talk to the agency shouldn't be when you have an issue, because then you have no common ground of trust or transparency. Um, you go about it by telling them, here's what I'm going to do, and then doing it.
Yeah.
So
Building trust.
you tell them, here's what we're going to do. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Here's what I'm going to give you an update. And yeah, I did exactly what I said I was going to do. And even when in 2013, when we had an inspection and the center sent in some folks, and it was another tough 483, we were able to go into the FDA and said, I told you what I was going to do in year 1. I
Mm.
told you what I was going to do in year 2 and year 3.
Mm.
Look at this 483. It's all the stuff from year 2.5 and 3. And I said, if you want us to reorder priorities, that's fine, but we're keeping on plan, because they would ask, Shane, what are you doing differently? Nothing. We had a plan.
Yeah.
We need to keep going through every system, and ultimately, that inspection was classified, positively, because we were right. We
Yeah.
followed the plan.
What are the key lessons that you can take away, or that you left Pfizer with that? You were with them for 5 or 6 years.
I was,
Glenmark,
and
weren't you?
I left after Pfizer bought, and after I had
Yeah.
the site sort of incorporated into that. I knew that I didn't think that Pfizer was that the large pharma was where I wanted to be. I'd say the biggest thing was just I really learned how to make risk-based decisions at a different level than I'd ever had to before. Where you're really thinking about the safety of the product and the safety of the
Mm.
patient and valuing that risk. I learned a tremendous amount about the FDA, not only at the district level, but also at the center level, and how things work and operate. And I really learned how to build a team, and how to inspire leaders. And,
Yeah.
I had I had 3 leaders on my team that went on to lead quality in their own right. And so it was sort of like I was able to put all the lessons that I had gained over the years, and I had to put everything on the table. I mean, it took everything that I had learned and would learn to make it through Hospira. But it was an amazing experience, and I'm bonded to these people to this day.
Yeah, awesome. And then you went to Glenmark following on from Hospira, and that was
Yes.
that was a startup facility, was it?
Yes. So Glenmark was this. It was interesting because I mean I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And you had this Indian-based pharmaceutical company that was a generic Indian-based, very well known in India, that wanted to go west. At the same time, you have these U.S. companies all wanting to go to India. You had an India company that said, "I want to go west. We want to establish ourselves in the United States, in South America, um, and we need your help to do that." And so there was a startup facility in Western North Carolina. We had a small sterile facility in Argentina. We had some biologics facility for early clinical over in Switzerland. So I had this cornucopia of responsibilities
Hmm.
as the senior VP, and each one of them had a unique thing that they needed to move through. The startup facility needed to get started up and get its first inspection and get off at the ground. The Argentina facility, we wanted to at the time actually ship products to the United States and major EMA countries, so it needed some remediation. They wanted to go into biologics, so we had this biologic startup facility. So it was a fascinating experience because it was the first time I had one, my boss was in a different country, and second, I had facilities, on three continents. So
Yeah, yeah. And you're just dealing with different cultures of and
exactly,
languages and things
I
like
would
that. You
go
learn a
to,
lot.
I would fly, and I had to learn,
Mm.
Argentina culture, and that was both that was fascinating about it, about how does Argentina culture do pharma, and
Right. Yeah.
what did I have to learn about that? And
Yeah. Yeah.
you talk about an introvert, they're very, it's very personable. So
Yeah.
employees would come up and hug me, and I'm like, okay, this is different. Um,
Yeah, probably not quite accustomed to what you used to over the
exactly,
years. And yeah,
and but it was that journey, and I think it gave me a perspective of the global nature
yeah,
of our industry.
yeah, fine. And then, so then you had AIMune for three or so years before moving to Empower.
With AImmune, when I had spent, and a lot of the reasons I left Glenmark was, I was traveling 90% of the time before
Mm,
COVID. And it was just really getting to me from a
mm,
personal standpoint. And then you had COVID.
yeah,
And suddenly I realized, hey, that's what my wife looks like. That's what my friends, that's what it's like to be in North Carolina again. And so when that ended, I'm like, I don't know if I can do this again. And AImmune came along, and Nestle had just bought this pharmaceutical company and was in the mind of, we think that we could go into nutritional pharmaceuticals,
mm,
and that would be a good offshoot of some of our medical nutrition that we do. And I'm like, okay, it's a head of quality job, and it was also, how do you start building a pharmaceutical unit, for
yeah,
Nestle?
yeah.
And so that's what that job was.
Yeah, very good. And I mean, look, you've been operating at vice president level now for about 15 years or so, Shane, and you've done
Yes.
so many different things. You've obviously, like, I think you're a great example of someone who I think you're a representation of a lot of people that are maybe going through their early stage of their career and have that sort of challenge of maybe being an introvert and want to progress into leadership positions, but may have something holding them back. And I think you're a great success story of someone who's overcome those challenges
Well, thank you.
and taken a huge roles over the course of your career and really impacted society. And what like as you look ahead, obviously recently started the role in the last 6 or 7 months or so, but um, what are you excited about now, and what does the future look like for you?
To me, at this point, it's about building leaders. It's about trying to pass on what I've learned and help grow and develop leaders, because hopefully I've gained some knowledge and some experience and some knocks over the years, and it's about finding leaders and growing them and giving those opportunities. I mean, I think the higher up you go on the chain, the more you remember that it's not about your performance, it's about your team's performance. And so you are constantly going to be judged, and the success of your team is going to be judged based on how you lead your team members. Are you inspiring them? Are you providing them clear communication and motivation? Are you growing and developing them? Are you helping them grow? And so to me, at this point in my career, that's what it's about. And so one of the things that attracted me to Empower is you've got this hugely growing company in a very exciting portion of the pharmaceutical industry. And I'm getting to grow that, and I'm getting to grow to grow the team across not only geographically, but just grow the size of the team and bring new leaders in and build the existing ones we have. And that's what I've been passionate about for a long time. I love this industry dearly. Um, and I think we do so much good as an industry. And I've been blessed to be able to work in all different parts of it. So, I've said before that at one point, if I retire or pass on to the next life, I'll still probably only have touched a fraction of what this industry has to offer in terms of learning opportunities and growth. And so I've been really blessed.
That's awesome. No, I think you've got an inspiring story, Shane, and like I said, I think a lot of people will take value from your early challenges in your career and take the I guess the things that you did implemented to help their own careers. So I appreciate you sharing that. I usually end with some quick fire questions, Shane, just to end the conversation. What are the three most important values that you live and die by?
Transparency, integrity, and I think open communication.
Yeah. Do you believe in leaving a legacy?
I do. And I think it's a legacy through others. I really enjoy clicking onto LinkedIn and seeing someone that was part of my team now just got promoted to vice president of, North America, and that nothing gives me more joy than that.
Awesome. Who's been the biggest inspiration in your life, either personally or professionally?
I'd say personally was my mom. Because I don't think I would have been on this journey without her.
Awesome. Final question. What one piece of advice would you give to future quality leaders?
Get out of your comfort zone. If you want to grow your career, you got to get out of your comfort zone. Learn all you can about not just about quality. Pay attention to how finance works, how R&D works, how supply chain works. The more you understand the interconnectivity, the better you're going to do your job as quality.
Shane, that's been brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure to have you on, and I think it's an inspiring journey, which a lot of people will be inspired by. So, if people want to reach out and pick your brains on anything, as I'm sure a lot of people may do, is LinkedIn generally the best way?
Absolutely. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I'd be glad to speak with you.
Well, look, best of luck with everything over the in the new career with Empower over the next few months and next year, and we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to today's show. I hope that you got value from it, whether you're starting your career in quality or if you're at the top of your field. Today's episode was brought to you by RX Group. I'm the founder of RX Group. We are a pharma and biotech recruitment organization focusing purely on quality assurance. We recruit consultants and senior level permanent quality professionals into the pharma and biotech industry. If we can support you, whether that be in a hiring capacity or if you yourself are looking for work, please get in touch with me on LinkedIn, visit our LinkedIn page where you can subscribe to the podcast, and visit our website www.rx-group.io to find out more about us. See you soon.